picture this.
A young Nigerian named Osazuwa was sent by his parents to Tokyo in Japan to attend university there a few years back. When he arrived in Tokyo, he made friends with the local Japanese students at his university and of course told them his name, Osazuwa. When he did, they looked at him in shock and said to him, "Are you joking? It's a pure Japanese name."
We'll pick up the rest of this story later. To be a good samurai, one must have half-black blood in their veins. 良い時になるためには、血管に半分の黒い血を持つ必要が。
Okay. I'm going to touch on the first part a little bit later, but as far as the connection between words from, if you want to say Africa, it's melanated people all around the planet, and it's different melanated people all around the planet. So specifically, the dude who went to school in Japan, he got acquainted with these young Asian students, and they realized that his African name sounded just like, almost exactly identical to a name that they're already familiar with. On top of that, there's going to be other similarities, and that's for a very specific reason. As far as this guy saying to be a true samurai, you must have black DNA, black genes, genetics, whatever you want to call it. My theory is because when you look at melanin and melanated people, for whatever reason, melanin, in reference to the muscles, we tend to have fast twitch muscles than other so-called races. Now, I'm not saying everybody. This is not racist. This is just genetics. You could go check it out yourself. I'm not saying, oh yeah, we're superior or anything like that. But just go do your research and you'll see why this is being said. Now, it's more that brings us together as the human race than what it seems like would bring us apart or draw us apart or cut a rift between us. But the fast twitch muscles is a thing. So in that time, when it was strictly swords and very brutal weapons being used, they're saying this for a very specific reason. A lot of Chinese and Japanese and other Asians had melanated people, not only from Africa, but even from America or Amoria or a Mexamore, Turtle Island. We've been traveling back and forth, and also the whole Pangea. If you ever heard of Pangea, all the continents was once connected. We didn't just stay in Africa. It's a whole nother story. So it's also melanated people from America, and there's a lot of similarities that's going to be unraveled. So most so-called Asian people are not that far removed, if removed at all. Especially when you look at a lot of Filipinos and Cambodian people. They some of them, my skin tone maybe even darker, and hair just as curly or maybe even tighter curls. So yeah, it's a lot of similarities. I could break it down more, but I'm gonna let the video continue.
So goes the old Japanese proverb. And as with everything historical that doesn't fit the current narrative, it is dismissed as just that, a coincidence. But when we actually start looking, there is evidence all over of an African seeding of the Eastern civilizations, and it is more obvious when we start to look at the writing system from China.
Writings of the gods, okay. Alright, let's see what they're talking about. I'm not even trying to be funny. This dude right here, he looked like one of my uncles. I mean, I got a lot of uncles. It's at least one or two of them that look like this dude. I kid you not. Similarities between uh, original melanated people and melanated people that might have come a little bit later. Uh, it's a lot of similar features, but I mean, go check out a movie called Hidden Colors by Tariq Nasheed. Shout out to Tariq Nasheed. He talked about this. Uh, Specifically in Japan, you have, I think, the Ainu people that live up in the mountain or in the bush, and they have the Asian, so-called Asian phenotype, the almond or really slanted eyes with the with really curly hair. So they have the phenotype as far as how the face looks, but the other features is real melanated. They have copper tone skin, woolly or curly hair. That's the original inhabitants of Japan. Then when you go to China, you find the same thing. I don't know what they call them over there, but I remember this years ago. I was in high school or middle school. I think I was in middle school. My grandma was watching the news, and it was national news, but it was kind of like swept under the rug, if you will, or it was kind of people just breezed right past it. It was an Asian scientist. You could probably find the news clip on YouTube, who said that all Asian genetics come from what he said Africa, but I'm gonna say melanin. Whether it's melanated people from Africa or melanated people from America, their genes derive from melanated people. Now, if you dismiss the we all come from Africa doctrine, which no disrespect to that ideal or that ideology. It was once Pangea, and genetic splicing, genetic manipulation happened a very long time ago, and also not just genetic manipulation. Um, Everything comes out of melanin. Uh, that's a whole nother story. I won't even go down that rabbit hole. But and this is not to say, once again, I'm not saying we're superior. I'm just giving you the facts. Go do your research. Don't get mad at me. I hope I'm just saying. But yeah, the purpose of this video is to show whoever's watching that once again we have more in common than not. We have more in common, and if anybody decides to actually take the time to look, you'll find out that we have more in common than things that we don't. So, yeah, the Chinese scientist in China, he found the genetic markers and found somebody, as he said, African. I'm gonna just say melanated. It's just the best way I feel like they could describe it. They saw melanin in the genetics. Also, if you're doing an ancestry test and you find that you was from this place, that place, or they say you might have an ancestor here or there, at the end of the day, you could, whatever state or continent they point you towards, and you might have an ancestor that's, I don't know, Cambodian. The further you go back, it's still gonna go back to somebody that's an original or a straight up black person, if you will, or a straight up melanated person. I'm gonna just say it the way a lot of people say it, because if you say it a certain way, they're gonna say you a supremacist or you're trying to be supreme. No, I'm just saying, the further you go back, like just as far as like the deeper they dig, the blacker it gets, the more carbonated or melanated it gets. But yeah, we have more in common than what you guys think. Essentially, is what I'm trying to say.
In 1990 BC, the god king Fuxi bestowed onto the land that was to become the empire of the Middle government, domestication, cooking, philosophy, rule of law, monument building, as well as kanji, the system writing. These injections of culture set into motion the great wheel that was to become the Empire of China. As its first emperor, we must ask, where did he and the people he belongs to come from? Where did he draw his wealth of knowledge and culture from? Before we go back to the genetic, osteologic, bone studies, cultural, and historical evidence, let us first cover the often ignored evidence of the similarities between Chinese characters and hieroglyphics.
So, boom. Hieroglyphics. You have pyramids here in North America, South America, the Americas. You got pyramids in Africa, ancient Kemet. But if you do your research, you'll find that the oldest pyramids on the planet are step pyramids, which we have right here in America, which go hand in hand, closely are related to the mound builders, or mounds, if you will, is another type of pyramid, I guess. At the end of the day, step pyramids, they say, are the oldest, which is right here in North America and Mexico specifically, which is, they have the biggest pyramid here in America or Mexico in the world, as far as we know. It's no telling what's in the Grand Canyon, but hey, that's a whole nother story. But anyways, in China, in their pyramids over there, you find similar hieroglyphics that you do in these pyramids. So it had to be some type of communication and connection.
Here, the similarities are once more too numerous to attribute to chance. Let us begin with the fact that both writing systems use logograms. These systems of writing use symbols or signs to convey meaning for a whole word. We have seen this before in our video, where we reviewed the evidence that multiple Mesoamerican writing systems have their roots in the Kemetic hieroglyphics. We see the same pattern again here, where a very large number of words can be seen to have the same logos, the same symbols, as the Medu Necher, the Kemetic writing system. These representations and similarities are more pronounced as we go further back in time. See how the representations of sky and sun are virtually identical or similar in roots to their Egyptian counterpart. Also notice how the older version of the Chinese characters look even closer to Medu Necher. In some instances, the symbols are pretty much interchangeable. See the ancient Egyptian logos for child and that of the Chinese, and there are a lot more. If I have enough funding, I would love to commission a cladogram, a phylogenetic study between the Chinese writing system and ancient Egyptian. I think the results would be fascinating. I'll leave the links in the description for you to explore, and if you want to support us in this effort. Further to the identical form and meaning of these characters, Chinese is also written top to bottom, and independent forms of writing that are top to bottom are very rare. But it so happens that hieroglyphics also falls within that category, as it can be written top to bottom, but also left to right and right to left. The Aztec writing system is also top to bottom, but we have already covered in other videos how Mesoamerican civilization were kickstarted by the Africans from Kemet. See our previous episodes on this. A particular aspect of ancient Chinese culture that has endured to this day is the tradition of excellence and artistry in its calligraphy system. The refined calligraphy of the Chinese writing mimics the tradition of perfectionism in writing hieroglyphics. So Chinese writing system didn't just borrow the characters and their meaning from Kemet, but they also inherited its essence and its art. But if ancient Chinese writing is a derivative of hieroglyphics, who brought it to China? And did they bring anything else? Pyramids. Pyramids aplenty. 100 pyramids in the area of Xi in central China. This evidence is very consequential, because soon after the pyramid building experience from Kemet begins, and as black people are shown to be moving east in around 2500 BC, pyramids and mastabas are appearing in central China. At the end of the Second World War, U.S. Air Corps pilot named James Gaussman claimed to have seen a gigantic white jewel-topped pyramid while flying between India and China during World War II. But his statement was kept a closely guarded secret of the U.S. military for 45 years before it became public knowledge. All the way back in the Shia dynasty, China was building pyramids, and some even larger than the Great Pyramid of Giza. This points to the fact that the leaders at the time had access to a significant amount of labor. That means, even back in this remote period, China already had a large population, probably thanks to the agricultural revolution brought about by the Africans at the top of the Shang dynasty. But the similarities to Kemet don't stop there. The ancient Chinese also practiced mummification. In fact, one of the best preserved mummies is Lady Dai, from the Han dynasty in 206 AD. Or like this 700-year-old mummy discovered by chance in eastern China, we witness the hand of the Africans again. China, just like Egypt, also performed sarcophagus burials for their kings. Just look at these magnificent tombs from Chinese 6th century emperors and compare them to the Egyptian king sarcophagus. Let's remember that sarcophagus in Egypt dates back to 2613 BC, at the time of the building of the pyramids. So the Kemetic tradition would have been much older, and thus the originator. Ancient Chinese afterlife is also borrowed from the Kemetic concept of afterlife. Ancient Chinese believed that the spirit or soul would continue as they had in life. This mimics exactly what the ancient Egyptian believed and practiced. In fact, just like the old king The ancient Chinese nobility would accompany the dead with their servants and slaves, along with other personal belongings, a practice that was later discontinued in Kemet. In Kemet, it was frequent to bury...
Okay, so right here you have the god Osiris, right? So, in this mythology, he was cut, body parts was thrown here, there, everywhere, all around the world. He's shown as being green. At one point in time, when the atmosphere was different, all melanated people, carbonated people was green. Due to the atmosphere changing, it kind of gave us this rusted copper tone look, how we look today. Melanated people, and then on down, you get lighter and lighter. And some you have darker, and people mix and get with so-called different races, which is that's a made-up concept. No such thing as race up into the 1700s. But yeah, at one point in time, we all was green, walking around looking like the Hulk.
The dead with their board games and their boat. The Egyptians believed that it would help their soul travel to the afterlife. Many ancient Chinese graves had had board games and chariots instead, but the cultural motifs are identical: pyramids, sarcophagus, burying of belongings, vessels for the afterlife. Again, the similarities are too significant to be dismissed, and we can see how the ancient from the Nubio-Kemetic civilization complex, especially its ruling class, sparked the early Chinese civilization. Now let's go back to our earlier story.
A young Nigerian named Osazuwa was sent by his parents to Tokyo in Japan to attend university there a few years back. When he arrived in Tokyo, he made friends with the local Japanese students at his university and, of course, told them his name, Osazuwa. When he did, they looked at him in shock and said to him, "Are you joking? That's a pure Japanese name." And he said to them, "Of course it's not Japanese, I'm from the Edo ethnic group in Nigeria." And the friends looked at him in even greater shock and said to him, "What did you just say your ethnic group was?" He repeated, "Edo." And then they said to him, "You've got to be kidding. Edo is the former name of Tokyo, this city we are in right now. Edo is the former name of Japan. It's also the name of the Edo Empire which reigned over Japan for centuries. Now, the Edo period of Japan was from 1603 to 1867 and was an era of military government. The dynasty was established by military commanders. Osazuwa, or Osa for short, was a history enthusiast, and he asked them who started the Edo Empire in Japan. And they said he was a military commander named Ieyasu. Osa was in total shock. The title of the military commander of the Edo Empire, i.e. the Benin Empire of Nigeria, who was second in power only to the king himself, was Iyase. As they chatted further, one of the Japanese looked up into the night sky and commented on the unusually bright moon, or Tsuki, and also asked him, "What did you just call the moon?" "Tsuki," he replied. And then also said, "In Edo, we call the moon Uki." And they looked.
So see, there you have it. All these similarities, the students at the school he was going to noticed. Now, they thought because of what parents and grandparents and the schooling system over there and wherever everybody else is from taught them that it was a purely Japanese name. And here they are finding out that this so-called melanated teenager from Africa had a name that sounded like their so-called Japanese names, and they see all these other similarities. This should kind of be telling them at this point that it's a commonality there. Now, maybe it didn't register, maybe it did. Who knows if they went and did further research, but this alone should show them, or should I say, speak volumes.
Astonishment. And then he added, "Uki is also the name we use for beauty." The Japanese kids stood bolt upright as they screamed, "And Tsuki is the name we also use for beauty." As they wondered aloud in amazement, an elderly Japanese man walked up to them to ask for directions, and the Japanese students greeted him by saying respectfully, "Domo, domo." Osa heard them and nearly fell off his chair. He said, "That's exactly how we greet elders in Edo land. We say, domo."
Make sure you follow him for excellent coverage of African history narrative. One thing is certain, is that history becomes far more interesting to study when the veil of racism is removed.
Thank you.
有一件事是肯定的，当种族主义的面纱被除去时，研究历史就会变得更加有趣。
Come with it, bro. Come with it. You gotta go harder. You gotta go way harder than that. Okay.
For those who can, please consider becoming a Patreon or donating via Buy Me a Coffee or via crypto donations. Even those who donate $1 help us gain access to.
They could have used me for that, but nah, I was playing. But yeah, so the video shows this guy was referring to Africa as the place where Chinese and Japanese people come from. That's partly true because at one point in time, all the continents was connected, and you have certain things that, or a lot of things that was taken out the history books. History was rewritten a whole bunch of different times. So we gotta take certain things with a grain of salt. I mean, history was literally rewritten a whole bunch of times. They show us what they want us to see and what they want us to know. Not gonna get too deep with my tinfoil hat on, but yeah, I mean, it should kind of be a little bit obvious at this point. But the thing is, it's less that separates us and there's more that brings us together. If you just take the time to look, if you care, because a lot of people right now, they interested in who they are, where they're from, and their ancestors, and figuring out family history. Um, Shit, just like in Louisiana, you had a lot of people, what I call the Great Migration, uh, early, what, 1900s, mid 1900s. You know, you had a lot of people, Creole people, light skin, beige, real light, bright, damn near white, that passed for white. And during the time where it was still segregation and discrimination, they moved to the north, the west, the east, anywhere but the south. I personally have family members that I was told about that moved away to certain places and they never came back. And can I really blame them? No, because it was a very harsh and segregated environment where if as far as the Creole or the light skinned population, if you couldn't pass the brown paper bag test, you couldn't be a part of they squad, they clique. So that's a whole nother story. But I said that to say we all mixed in some way, shape, or form, some more than others. But most races, not most, all races, you trace everybody back to what most people say. You trace everybody back to Africa. Once again, that's not necessarily true because of Pangea. I mean, it just makes no sense because you had giants back in the day, and hell, don't even use giants. Like, if that wasn't a threat to run around and hide and then getting a whole different place and environment because you're running from this so-called threat. If that wasn't a threat, yo, you still got to factor in if they was in Africa or wherever they were, they had wild animals. They tried, or they didn't just try, they succeeded in hunting and eating. So they moved around. So when Pangea was a thing, all the continents was together, they wasn't just staying in Africa. So the correct thing for me, I think, at least, I would say, they say everybody, you can trace everybody's DNA back to an African person. You can trace everybody's DNA back to a melanated person. So yeah, with that being said, you want more videos like this, with me dropping a little information about what I know about these certain subjects, like, comment, subscribe, and peace. I'll holla at you.
Research. This is important because the historical narrative often available online or in printed media rarely covers our truth. Many of the important studies are hiding behind academic subscriptions, and your small donations help me get to these articles that I often cite in my videos.
Yeah. I'm gonna stop it right there for real this time. Yeah. If you enjoyed this, subscribe.